This is Dr. Thomas Mueller. I am a professor in the Department of Communication at Appalachian State University in Boone, North Carolina. We recently had the pleasure of hosting Mandela Washington Fellows who came to our university to study and learn over a portion of the summer. I had the privilege of presenting a seminar on communication and marketing for nonprofits. And I wanted to pull a couple excerpts from the presentation that I felt resonated well with the fellows, and I had some follow-up feedback from them, more questions and ideas and concepts on how to implement. One of the things we talked about as we went through this presentation is, what is your tone? We talk often of what the content is, how do we distribute it, right? How do we get people to respond to it? As I mentioned in the presentation, what's our unique selling proposition? And then, of course, important, what's the call to action, right? What do we want people to do? And as I concluded this seminar, I talked about one thing to really think about: the tone of your communication. It's something we talk about often in advertising. You might see it in a creative brief. What is the tone of the message, right? Is it welcoming? Is it entertaining? Is it terse? Might it be built through fear appeal, right? To gain people's, in a way, negative emotional response, which again prompts more action, right? So what is that tone and how is that message presented? Okay. And I talked in this about what we sometimes look past, what is the quality of sound, and there's some new information out there on sonic marketing. So just the ambiance of sound, what is it? And what are the ancillary sounds, maybe even the surrounding sound that's set in the context of where you're filming or shooting, right? So it's just another place to be relevant. Another concept to think about is, not just, hey, I've got a great mic and my audio's good, but more of the context of sound and how that affects the end consumer. All right. And then I went with this, this is sort of old school, but back in the 90s, we had Stephen Covey and we talked about begin with the end in mind. And that's always about long-term and your strategy and your vision. What are you trying to accomplish? How do you want to be seen? If your brand or organization is an individual, how does that individual act? How does that individual, embrace or communicate with others? So I always suggest begin with the end in mind. And this is a consistent consideration over time. Okay. So it's always important to think about that because we are in this fractured, rather immediate culture of communication through social media. So I try to think more about what is the tone as we begin with that end in mind. All right. I gave some suggestions on things to read and view. I'd recommend these to anyone. These are the things I'm currently feeding into my emails and my social right now. I really love these individuals. I love what they're saying. I love the news. I like to invest 15, 20 minutes a day on their perspectives or the news updates, but to, again, self-educate as much as possible. So in that, I did use Paul Worthington as an example of tone. Okay, Paul has been a good friend to us. Paul has helped students at our university. I highly respect Paul. I just used an example of something he recently did in his newsletter regarding Elon Musk. Okay, it's a choice. Okay, it's a choice, and I'm not judging that as right or wrong. But in this context, as Worthington reacted or related to something Musk had recently done in the news, he called him a carnival barker shitposter. Okay. So I just used that with the fellows and said, look, if there's someone out in the world or in your organization, in your purview of people that you deal with, and possibly it's a conflicted relationship, possibly you view them as negative. But how do you represent that in your tone, right? It's a choice. Do you label the individual as Worthington did? Maybe so. Maybe so. Maybe that's the tone you want to take, and maybe that's part of your brand development and presentation. Or is there a different tone? Overall, are you all about welcoming or trying to possibly find that place of debate where individuals can come together and have meaningful discussions. What is the tone you'll use in that approach? Okay, so those are all things we were talking about. It's not easy, it's just a place to start, but to always think about your position on tone in your media, messaging, and marketing. Okay, so that's me. Appreciate it. Thanks for this. I hope to do a couple more of these just as updates on other what I view were important topics as part of working with the wonderful Mandela Fellows. All right, thanks a lot.